Yes. Hi there. I'm Ahsan Ali, A.A. Shaw. I'm a freelance writer, business writer to be more precise, and I've been writing for the past 5 years. And more different research and business articles are published under my name at different platforms. And today I'm going to, we are going to discuss a very interesting topic, just like every week. And the topic is going to be uh, law and land, how different countries were created. And yeah, how different countries were created, and what's the reason behind it? Is it law or the land, or because because my guest speaker Edward Konowicz, when he mentioned it to me, the topic, and the very first thing came to my mind was law of the land. And I think before wasting any more time, I should introduce my guest speaker, and he is Edward Konowicz.
Hi,
Hi
everybody.
Ed. Hi Ed, how
Uh,
are you?
I'm doing good. I think this is a very
Okay.
relevant and important topic today, particularly relevant to Pakistan, which
Yes.
is
Yes, indeed. I think it is
how did
relevant. I
different countries form? Why did
Yes. I
Pakistan
think it is.
separate from India?
Yes. I think it is relevant everywhere. Don't you agree?
Yes, it's involving the whole world right now,
Yes.
which is
So what's the reason? May I ask you a question? What's the reason of choosing this topic, this particular topic, law of the land or law and land?
well, the reason is there may be a huge human rights violation in China, which would be a concern
Mm-hmm.
for people in Pakistan because Islamic cultures may be under direct physical attack.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a concern for people who are focused on freedom of belief and freedom of religion, that
Mm-hmm.
people have a right to pursue their beliefs and freedom of speech without being
Mm-hmm.
exterminated or
Mm-hmm.
discriminated against by the government.
So that's one reason, and it is a very good reason because because when when we talk about Muslim in China, then the very first thing what we hear in the media, it seems like a genocide. Don't you agree?
It could be. We can't trust the media, but I think
Mm-hmm.
after you're done listening to what I have to say,
Mm-hmm.
um, it is going to apply not only to China but to people of
Mm-hmm.
different beliefs around the world. It applied to Native peoples that
Indeed.
and it's a issue. It's an issue we see between the Israelis and Palestinians. It was an
Mm-hmm.
issue in Yugoslavia when it separated into Croatia, Bosnia, and Serbia. And then when
Mm-hmm.
the Soviet Union fell apart, it's an issue. So and it's not being discussed in the media. I mean, you can't turn on the television or read a newspaper and see a discussion over this important topic. And I think I can prove
Mm-hmm.
it by history that this is a current topic that is very relevant, that people need to consider that spirituality or consciousness has a momentum and it produces common law or traditions on the land. And then
Mm-hmm.
someone becomes the landlord or king or president or governing party, and they codify
Mm-hmm.
law and impose that law, which is a value system, on people. And then people
Mm-hmm.
resist it and change their values. And then either they're exterminated, like Germany tried to do to Jews and gypsies because they weren't integrated in the German state, or the country separates. And
mm,
a lot of people don't understand this is for people to live together, they need something in common, enough in common
mm,
that they're at peace. And if they
mm,
don't have enough in common, they need to regroup.
mm,
And I think England used or Britain used this logic, this reasoning to separate
mm,
Pakistan from India. There couldn't be peace until there was a regrouping of beliefs.
mm.
And right now, it's going
Or
on in the
I.
world. The issue today in the world is formal medicine has been so compromised by pharmaceutical racketeering, which is
Mm,
organized crime. The pharmaceutical companies are pushing their drugs and vaccines. People are splitting into two different groups: those that see the problem of medicine taking away people's rights and not giving them free choice, like in vaccines or psychiatric care, and those that feel medicine is enlightened and is concerned for people's health and should make things mandatory. So around the
mhm,
world, we have now people splitting into two groups: those that see medicine as organized crime, and those that see medicine as a progressive movement that needs to be imposed upon people who are not scientific, supposedly. And so the
mhm,
issue is science corrupt? Is science catering to where the money is coming from, or is science actually presenting facts? And people are split
mm.
over it. But this issue
Yeah.
is common. We just went through the issue not long ago with Yugoslavia breaking up into three countries: Catholic Croatia, Muslim Bosnia,
Mm,
and
mhm,
supposedly Orthodox, Christian Orthodox Serbia, but their leader was a psychiatrist. Today, modern society has its belief system in psychiatry and drugs. For example, Catholics
mhm,
used to go to church and get communion. Today, you're supposed to go to a doctor and get a pill. And I think that's a belief
mm,
system.
mm, mm. Or I think these all of these things, law of the land, belief system, cultures, all of these things are almost related with each other. Don't you agree?
Yes, they're very much related. So, as people
Mm-hmm,
believe in their habits, how they wear their clothes. So, when you try
mm-hmm,
to travel between um, countries, you have to go through what we call in the United States customs. The custom
mm-hmm,
officer can refuse you entry, but custom is close to the
mm-hmm,
word costume, which as you go to different countries, they have different clothing and different customs. And as a result
mm-hmm,
of that, there is an interface. You know, if you go to Saudi Arabia, it's much
mm-hmm,
different than if you're going to go to Mexico, and the laws
mm-hmm.
and the rules are different. But that
Of course.
depends. People manipulate it. The king or the president or the leader is basically the landlord. They're the lord of
Mm,
the land, and they try to
mm,
impose their values and their laws on everyone in that land. But like in
mm,
China, China is Marxist, which is they believe in materialism. They don't really believe in the soul, or that moral ethics overrides economic efficiency. They're, they believe in economic efficiency. So if you're religious in China, whether you're Muslim or Christian, you're going to face a certain amount of
then,
resistance from the people
mhm.
who are in charge, who place a higher value on economics.
Yes, and I think you would be, if you are religious and you are living in a materialistic country, then you would be in a very bad situation.
Yes. And it needs to be
mm,
discussed. The media has become globally consolidated, and they're not really
mm.
discussing intellectual topics that are relevant like we're doing here. So we're kind of the alternate
Yes, indeed.
media.
Yes. And we are trying to be because that's the reason I wanted to have a session with you on a weekly basis to discuss these intellectual topic with a person who almost has a knowledge about and who wants to I want to discuss these topic, you want to discuss this topic. So why should we wait for the media to discuss it? We should discuss it with each other, and we should bring like-minded people on our platform. Isn't it right?
Yeah, I think we need to discuss what is going on in Australia or discuss what's going on in
Mm-hmm.
China. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the big issue is what are going to be the constitutions or the laws governing countries. Right now,
Mm-hmm.
in most countries, and particularly I'm in the United States and in Australia, I have a relative in Australia, the governors are acting as dictators rather than pass laws through the legislators and rather than have the laws addressed by the courts. The governors
Mm-hmm.
of the states are making arbitrary rules and having the police enforce them, which is we're now under dictatorships. We're no longer in constitutional law. Countries are now following their constitution. They're allowing, particularly the medical profession, to dictate policy without review. And I think this is a major issue. I think an issue people face around the world is, do vaccines help more than they harm? Or do they harm more than they help? And people are now supposed to be given a choice to evaluate it. The news media doesn't want to have a discussion with a pro vaccine and an anti vaccine person. They don't want a discussion of this. The, the world's governments have become more dictatorial, where they want to tell people this is what you should do. And if you don't do this, you're ignorant. But what we want to do here is say, no, there's intelligent differences of opinion. Because someone differs in their opinion does not mean they're ignorant.
Mm-hmm. So you have mentioned very good points. You were mentioning about vaccination system, the system in China, and the separation of different country based on religion. And you also mentioned the British reason for separating India and Pakistan. You were mentioning anything, and I think I see the reason now you chose this topic, that it is very vast and broad, and almost it covers everything.
Yeah, it's very broad, but sometimes the broad topics are specifically important, which is we have to
Hmm.
recognize to be a country, there has to be a certain amount of agreement over values. And how do you get that agreement over values should be negotiated. And right now, the leadership doesn't want negotiation. They want to say, these are the values, and we're going to impose them on you. And if you don't accept them, you're going to be penalized. And I'm saying, and I believe in a more natural form of consciousness, that an agreement can arise more naturally. But what the
Indeed.
problem is certain large economic interests, which is large corporations, want to impose their economics on people.
Mm.
And particularly, this is true in
So,
the United States
mm.
and Australia.
so, so I've been also since we are friends on Facebook, and I've been reading your posts for the past many years, and you have been very I would say you have been criticizing the US government and corporations, the big corporations. Many times you have. criticized it many times. So, may I ask a reason why?
Yeah, because the human rights, the United States culture, which I'm part of, has a great
Mm,
emphasis on individual rights such as freedom of speech, freedom of
mm,
belief, freedom of
mm,
assembly, which means
mhm,
you should be able to, as long as you obey the law, which is the traffic laws, you're not stealing, you're not harming someone. You should have a
mhm,
large enough agreement in the well being of others that you can tolerate differences of belief. And these
mm,
large corporations are now imposing a value structure. And part of that
mm,
value structure is the stock market and the use of certain transportation facilities. And it's more serious in United States where cars are an extreme expense. Other countries realize trains are cheaper, which is more efficient to move people on trains
mm.
or tracks than keep large roads and bridges moving. And the other thing is war. I mean, we don't want to
Mm,
settle disputes
mm,
by war and
mhm,
bombing people. I mean, that's my big
mm.
disagreement. And there's so many
Yes,
corporations making a lot of money on killing people. And I don't
mm,
think people are that much in conflict that they want to kill each other. I think corporations and governments are making money and having influence by killing people. I think that's wrong. I don't
yes,
think,
I also agree. I also agree on this point because the same companies, they are selling weapons on both sides. They are giving you the weapons, the good guys, they are also giving the weapons to the bad guys. So what's the point of having a war when the same companies are selling the weapons?
yeah, and that's it's frightening. And so I'm
Hmm.
kind of a protester of that. And I like
Hmm.
to encourage other people to, which is I think the momentum of how people think has an effect. But if your thinking is not very aware, which is if you don't have much knowledge, your thinking doesn't have much of an effect. So I really emphasize education. A lot of people criticize formal education, but I'm I'm thankful I went through college. I'm thankful I had formal studies. I disagreed with about 20% of it, but because 20% is wrong doesn't mean you throw the
Hmm.
80% out. We have an expression in English, don't throw the baby out with the dirty bathwater, which is, you want to get rid of the dirty bathwater, what's wrong.
Yes.
But at formal education, in which you study science and engineering and history and politics, is still important, even if it is a lot of propaganda. You have to
Mm,
filter out the propaganda, and then you can now go study on your own and think on your own so that you are more informed. And I think if you're more informed and educated, your consciousness has more power, and
mhm,
it's you can resist what is wrong better. I mean,
mhm,
there's a lot of things going wrong, like the wars and the bombing and the imposed medicine. And to be able to
mm.
stop that, you need to be informed. You're not going to stop it with guns. You're going to stop it with
Yes.
information.
I think that's how the system of brainwashing works. Because if you are better informed, your conscious is good. You have a good sense of guilt or good consciousness. Then you would be able, when you have a good conscious, then you would be able to make good choices. So when everybody starts following this process, this law of consciousness of believing having a good conscience, then I think almost all the conflicts of all the people of the world, they could be gone
Yeah, I think so.
if
I think that the
now.
big
Yeah.
example of that is the Palestinians and the Israelis. I think both the
Mm-hmm.
Palestinian people and Israeli people are very nice
Mm-hmm.
people. And if they could
Mm-hmm.
just negotiate with each other, there would not be war. But
Yes.
but outside forces that are benefiting from the buying of military equipment are
Mm-hmm.
instigating war and division rather than allowing good people to come together and negotiate something out that's workable. I mean, you can't be perfect as a human being, and
Mm-hmm.
and and there's going to be a certain amount of injustice, but we try to make the major decisions to be fair and some type of due process, which is some type of proceeding in which we can negotiate out some type of settlement. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the truth of it is, and I'll say this, it would have been a lot cheaper if the
Mm-hmm.
Israelis, rather than wage war, if they wanted the land, they would have paid the Palestinians enough money for their
Mm-hmm.
valued land that they could move someplace else where they're more consolidated as a country and have the
Mm-hmm.
economics to survive well. Obviously,
Yes.
the Israelis chose to put their money into war.
Mm-hmm.
And and
Well, I think
this is a touchy
when you
topic
talk,
because let me just
mm-hmm.
say this
I
because either the
I
Palestinians
think.
can hate your guts or the Israelis can hate your guts because they both
Mm-hmm.
feel they're correct on their side. And I think
Mm-hmm.
both of them are correct. This is what's difficult. Both the
I
Palestinians
think
and the
I
Israelis.
think emotions.
Let me just finish
When we
this.
talk about when we talk about consciousness, then the thing is you have to see things, what is right and what is wrong, and you have to develop a sense of understanding about yourself and about other people. But the problem is we see in the world and different in some conflicted areas, like you have mentioned Palestine and Israel and many other countries, the bordering, just like India and Pakistan, also face the same issues. The problem is the emotions, they get control over their consciousness. That's how everything goes wrong.
Well, both. This is what I was going to say. Both sides are correct. You can have
Yes.
an adult recognize it. Both the Palestinian position and the Israeli position, from
Hmm.
their point of view, are correct. And
Hmm.
as an adult, you have to recognize that two people can totally disagree and both can be correct from their point of view.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
then you have to negotiate out a fair settlement.
Hmm. Hmm.
And
And I think,
that's very difficult, but it can be done. It's much better to negotiate out a
yes.
fair trade than is to go to war.
Yes, exactly. When you try to have a better understanding of each other, then I think things can be solved. But the problem is there are many factors are involved behind the scene. They don't want things to settle. Just like you have mentioned, corporations, the countries, and they have their interests, the politicians, the ambassadors, and they want to they want to make their own legacy of winning a war instead of resolving the issue.
Well, what seems to be the problem, and this is why religions develop, there seems to be something
Hmm.
evil in control of the earth
Hmm.
and the governments. And the
Yes.
different religions point to this evil. And so we as good people are facing
Hmm.
people on the top that are influenced by evil, that want to cause
Yes.
suffering. And the question
Hmm.
is, the power is in the land. I mean, people can, you know, talk about God or Allah, but You go over to Japan, the Japanese law applies. You go to China,
Mm-hmm.
the China laws apply. You go to Saudi Arabia, the Saudi
Mm-hmm.
Arabia laws apply. So we're dealing
Mm-hmm.
with the power of the land. So
Mm-hmm.
people manipulate the land, and like a train coming down a mountain, consciousness has
Mm-hmm.
a momentum. You're not going to stand on the track and stop the train. The train is going to roll over you. So when
Yes.
you have a momentum of consciousness, whether it's in Saudi Arabia, Israel, China, Japan, you're not going to stand on the track of that culture and stop it. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to create your own momentum from off of that track because you're not on that track. And people
Mm-hmm.
need to realize there is a lot of power in the land. You change the
Mm-hmm.
land, you go to a different country, you're going to be subject, as the Hindus call it, karma. You're going to have different karma in Saudi Arabia than the karma you're going to have in Japan. And the religions don't recognize that. The religions and science ignore the power in the land. There's a lot of power in the land, and the land projects the law. So that's what I wanted to bring up, a new idea. The land has power. How do you explain that? I mean, we get a little bit in the Abrahamic religions, which is the Holy Land, which is there's one land, Jerusalem, or whatever you want to call it, and that's where the power is. But the truth is, the power is in all lands. I mean, the United States is a very powerful land. England is a powerful land. China is a powerful land. It's just not the Holy Land. They all claim to be holy. They all claim to be good, but they're different, which is the law, which is karma, is based on the land to a large extent, and the land is manipulated by the land lords. And the landlords are the kings, the emperors, the presidents, the, the political parties that dominate the land. I can't hear you.
Okay. Is it good now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay. I think it depends upon your definition of the law of the land, because when you look at from the religious perspective, then the law of Israel and land of Israel and Mecca, all of these lands, they are considered holy lands, and they are not most powerful lands in the world, but from the religious and spiritual point of view, they are the most powerful land. But when you change the definition, just like America is a powerful land from the economic point of view, China is a powerful land, Russia and Europe and Australia. But it depends upon your definition of law of the land.
Well, it does, but it's basically the habits of people, and particularly the
Hmm.
landlords. The
Hmm.
landlords project the power of the
Hmm.
land, and
Yes.
but what this is the story of Moses. Moses realized he could not be free to practice his ideas unless he left the land of Egypt,
Hmm.
which was
Hmm.
the land of Egypt had power, so he had to leave. And a lot of people do not admit the land has power, which is even if there isn't landlords or rulers, lords of the land, you do something that's not part of the local habits, you can be in trouble. There's a spiritual or consciousness nature to the land. And I actually think part of that is the trees that grow on the land. So the
Hmm.
trees have a lot of influence.
Hmm.
And
Or
it's a Go ahead.
I okay. Okay, I think you have mentioned one thing, and I think there's one also way of we can also say that because the lords in the land, the people who are powerful people living in a particular land, they give the definition uh, to their land, and ordinary people, their workers, their serf, and their farmers, the people who are beneath them, they have no other reason to follow them. So that's how it goes on, and that's how religions of the world they are developed.
Yeah, well, there used to be two parties, which is the state and religion. But a lot of times
Mm-hmm,
the state and religion combine into one party. I think, and
mm-hmm,
this is where Buddhism comes in, and I think Buddha
mm-hmm,
was correct. If you raise your reasoning and awareness high enough, you become an
mm-hmm,
influence on the land.
mm-hmm.
So I think it was
Yes.
Asaka, who was a ruler of India, was Buddhist. But that was a
Mm-hmm,
result of the independent thinking of Buddha, just like the Roman Empire had to become more so called Christian because Jesus,
mm-hmm,
whether you see him as a prophet or what else, his thinking was powerful enough to get a momentum that would change what the power of the land was, which is powerful
mm-hmm,
thinkers who are aware and informed change the land. Muhammad, it's the same way. Muhammad goes to a
mm-hmm,
cave and he
mm-hmm,
develops his awareness and thinking, and now he can
mm-hmm,
project that power over land.
mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
the same was, the case with Buddhism. Buddhism particularly projected more towards Indochina and China, and
Mm-hmm,
then Japan, and then became part of the land. So
mm-hmm,
this idea of a thinker, an intelligent thinker, influencing the land and changing it is an important concept,
mm-hmm,
which is important to
mm-hmm,
become educated, informed, and aware because your thinking can influence the land.
mm-hmm.
Right now, we're at a crisis,
Mm-hmm.
which is all
And
countries are divided.
I think the whole world is at crisis. There are many countries they are at conflict with one another, just like Palestine, Israel, uh, India and China, India and Pakistan, and
Oh,
Pakistan and Afghanistan, and Turkey with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is with Iran, and
and Yemen, yeah.
conflict yes, and we see conflict everywhere, and we don't see any reason, we don't see consciousness. So what's going to happen? What do you think about the future, about particularly about law of the land?
Well, I think, and it's like you and me, I think a whole bunch of informed people are rising slowly in their thinking and influence
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
try to create a more tolerant system of government, a less
Hmm.
warmongering system of government,
Hmm.
to negotiate more with
Yes.
people. And
Hmm.
this is hard because a lot of people don't want to negotiate. They want to just impose
Hmm.
their values. They don't want to give choice. I don't know what's going to
Yes.
happen. I think the conflicts between the countries are less at this point than the conflict between medicine, which is corporate corporations control medicine, and a lot of people do not want the drugs, do not want the vaccines. I think this is the major issue in the world. And all countries are
Hmm.
divided over this because these corporations have taken control over medicine and want to impose their concepts of medicine, which are frequently harmful. We saw this
Hmm.
with um, Vioxx, we saw this with psychiatric drugs, We saw this with some vaccines, like the meningococcal vaccine. With other vaccines, we see a lot of people being damaged by them, and people should
Well,
be able to refuse them.
I've got a question here. When you talk about big corporations and the government, they are their functionality, their system of governance, it is completely different. So, when you have to choose between the government and the corporation, what would you choose?
Well, I don't think they're that separate. I think the corporations largely control the government at this point.
Mm-hmm,
So I don't think there's a choice. I think whether you choose the government or corporations, you're under the same policy.
mm-hmm,
In the United States, we have two, actually, it's three um,
mm-hmm,
parts of government that monitor health. One's the CDC,
mm-hmm,
Center for Disease Control. One's the
mm-hmm,
FDA, the Federal Drug Administration. The other one's the National Institute of Health. And they're basically
mm-hmm,
controlled by corporations. They're not really
mm-hmm,
government. They're protecting the corporation's interest and profits and benefiting from the profits. So we don't
mm-hmm,
have a choice. Our choice
mm-hmm,
is none of the above. And that's where you
mm-hmm.
need
Or
faith.
I think Okay, I think if I have to choose, I think uh, when we look at the functionality of the government, it's very slow and it raises the chances of it is corrupt. On the other hand, corporations, I like the functionality of the government. They are clear about their objective and mission. Their objective is to make money and profit, and that's how it works. So when we are going to understand between two of these entities, government and the corporations, then we can easily understand corporations. When it comes to understanding the government and politics is also involved, then things get messy.
Well, I
What do
think
you
there's,
think?
we're programmed to believe there's economics in the government, politics and
Mhm,
economics. But I think there's a third factor, which is how
mhm,
people think. And it's not just the
mhm,
majority. No reform
mhm,
has been done by the majority. All reform
mhm,
is against the government and against the majority. It's like Buddha's reform was against the caste system. The caste system
mhm,
was in power. And so
mhm,
Buddha said, no, he's not subscribing to the caste system. There's no differentiation between different families or whatever in Buddhist thinking. And he came to a lot of influence.
mhm,
And that really, when we see that it going to Mahatma Gandhi, he
mhm,
also finally rejected the caste system. Now, I'm not a
mhm.
promoter of Mahatma Gandhi, but I just wanted
Okay,
to bring up that reform is done by a few people. Reform, like
okay,
the end of slavery,
okay.
was done by a few people.
You have mentioned a very good point about the caste system and how Mahatma Gandhi rejected the caste system and how Buddha rejected the caste system. And perhaps it is ironic for you, and perhaps it would be difficult for you to understand. I live in Pakistan, bottom of the third world countries, and I see the caste system running and uh, successfully functioning here in Pakistan. Many people in this country right now they believe in the caste system. They okay publicly they don't admit that, but in their attitude, in their lifestyle, they completely believe in the caste system. They don't
So, do
think
you mean an
they are
economic caste system or a family based caste system, or both?
family. It's a family-based caste system.
Yeah, I think that's true to some extent. It is even true in England. That's the House of
Mm-hmm,
Lords. And I think that's one of the vulnerabilities that India and Pakistan had to England is England itself is a caste system, and the majority still subscribe somewhat to the caste system, but the minority that says it's wrong dominate the conversation, which is you can find a person who will give more respect to a family than another family, but if you say to them that's incorrect, we're all supposed to be equal, they are going to have to somewhat agree with you. They're going to look bad to say that this person deserves more privileges than you. So the idea has circulated and is the morality that we're all supposed to be treated as equals. It may not be true, but but you can say that. Not only can you say that, you yourself can live that. You yourself can live treating everyone equally. Now, someone may get upset because you do that, because they want special privileges or they want you to cater to them. And it does get dangerous to treat everyone equally because some people feel they have more power, and they do have more
Mm-hmm.
power. They have more power on the land.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be aware of this person has more power than me. So I'm not going to argue with them. I'm going to walk around them and
Mm-hmm.
bypass them because they have the power of the land, which is they're a
Yes.
landlord.
Yes, and I think the reason behind the family caste system is based on the economy. If you're rich and powerful, then you can choose and you can make your own caste. Once you are at the bottom, then you don't have any other choice. You have to accept the law of the land.
Right, somewhat. But
Yes.
the more you become aware of this, the less you have
Mm-hmm.
to accept it. The more you
Mm-hmm.
become aware of the caste system, the more you
Mm-hmm.
can avoid it.
Yes. So the people who believe in the caste system, it would be, I think, useless to discuss these topics with them because they are not going to they aren't going to understand your point of view. They're focused because they have lived their whole life in the family-based caste system. So the only way to prove them wrong is to be to get better economically.
Well, I wouldn't say you have to live within your means,
Hmm.
which is
Yes.
there's no sense working to the point where you're sick. It
Hmm.
can't work, right? I
Hmm.
mean,
Yes.
even business owners and people who are at the top of the caste
Hmm.
system have to spend a
Hmm.
lot of hours, even if it is just communicating,
Hmm.
and a lot of effort. So you
Hmm.
have to learn to live within your economic boundary condition
Hmm.
and let it grow naturally. I
Hmm.
don't think economics is as important as people say it is.
Hmm.
And as long as you can find another way of doing something. For a large
Hmm.
part of my life, I did not have a car, which is unusual in the United States. But I wanted to buy a house, so I
Hmm.
didn't have a car. I used the bicycle for a large part of my life and saved the money
Hmm.
I would have spent on a car in order to own my own house. So
Yes. I
we make
think
choices in our life.
yes. Yes.
And the whole thing, I think more than the caste system, I think the issue is the job system.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yes.
if you have to find a job that's convenient to you, that gives you enough income, that you have
Hmm.
enough skills to be able to live within your economic means. And
Hmm.
that's different for different countries. I mean, the United States is unusual in its emphasis on cars. Most
Hmm.
people in the United States depend on cars for transportation, but
Hmm.
they work long hours. most families in the United States, the husband and wife work, and if a child's in high school or older, they work. So the
Mhm.
car is based upon a lot of people working in the family. But
Mhm.
you know, I don't think I'm kind of spiritual in the sense that I think your awareness and your chores, what you see as your job, and this is sort of
Mhm.
like almost a, I'm not a Buddhist, but it's like a Buddhist
Mhm.
monastery. You have certain chores of cleaning and
Mhm.
maintenance, and you address the chores of your location, which could be a job, and you live within the means. Because Buddhist monks, they just have a robe and a bowl. Some of them go begging, particularly in
Mhm.
Indochina, for their food, and that's their job. And people will give them
Mhm.
food. Um, the In the United States, people tend to go to college, learn a trade, particularly if it's engineering. They get, like I went to school and learned engineering or technology, and that provided me enough skills to have enough income to have a house and a car. But from using computers, these glasses are sunglasses, but I had cataracts, and I think it was from my job because I used the
Mhm.
computer a lot that I had to have cataract operations. Now I had those
Mhm.
operations. So I think people have different paths, which
Mhm.
is we economics is more an indicator of what you can do or can't do. I don't see
Yes. And
economics as a restriction, but more as an indicator, letting you know what your limits are.
mhm. I think economic and making the right choices, and that's how you can turn your life.
Yeah, uh,
Mhm.
but it's hard. I mean, not everyone has equal choices. I mean, they have family
Yes.
obligations, different family obligations. They're born in a different caste economically, so they may have
Mhm.
less help from their parents. They're born in a geographical area where there may be not many jobs. So people
Mhm.
sometimes have to move, sometimes have to find
Mhm.
new friends. So there's not a simple answer. But the important
Mhm.
thing is and what I'm emphasizing here is to understand the local customs and culture that the law of the land, the common law, is going to affect your decisions. And if you're more
Mhm.
aware of the customs, it doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It may
Mhm.
mean you have to avoid a certain custom, but you
Mhm.
have to you have to take it into account, which
Yes.
is you have to account for the different laws and customs.
Yes. Yes, you don't have to agree with those laws, but you have to keep those laws in mind if you want to survive in a certain culture or in a certain land. Just like I'm here living in Pakistan, I avoid discussing and criticizing religion. So, because I know the functionality of this culture and this land, so you have to avoid certain things
And I
to
think that
survive in a certain land.
right, I think that was the emphasis of Buddha.
Hmm.
And I'm not promoting Buddhism,
Yes.
but I think
Hmm.
Buddha came to awareness under the tree. Look, the tree's not
Hmm.
talking, it's not moving, and it's doing well. The Bodhi
Hmm.
tree is surviving, and it's surviving because its meditation, its thinking is good. So Buddha's
Hmm.
emphasis was your awareness, your intelligence, your reasoning,
Yes. Hmm.
and then of course your ethics, which is your compassion, should be included
Hmm.
in that, which it isn't just being intelligent. You also have to have ethics or compassion. And we've
Hmm.
been taught in the West politics that it's important that we talk. We're talking here. We do believe it's important that we talk, but
mhm,
our talking should come from a very good meditation, which is before I go and do a video, I spend hours
mhm,
meditating on it. I mean, when you're
mhm,
listening to me, the
mhm,
thinking has been edited and has been shaped by hours of meditation. And
mhm,
I think there has to be uh, a more emphasis on that, and that you also have to meditate on what is the law of the land, because the law of the
mhm.
land is very powerful. It doesn't mean you, as you said, doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but I think you have to
Yes,
recognize power.
yes. If you are living in a certain in a certain region, in a certain land, just like you are living in China, then you have to be a bit materialistic to survive in a certain in the Chinese culture. If you're living in Saudi Arabia, then you have to keep your mouth quiet. If you're living in the US, then you have to speak up for yourself. And there are different laws of the land in different countries. So you have to follow those laws of the lands.
Yeah, and you have to understand that karma or consequences is based largely on
Hmm.
the land, but
Hmm.
you can also change the thinking of the
Hmm.
land. I don't want to be, oh,
Hmm.
follow the law of the land. It's more
Hmm.
respect it, but also make it better. You want to
Hmm.
meditate on changing and making it better. And the more educated, the more informed you are, the more likely you're
Hmm.
going to change the law of the land, make it better, reform the land to make it better. But but this is a
Yes.
different emphasis, and I think it's very
Hmm.
practical emphasis. I think if someone listened to what we have said, I think a lot of that they've already done in their life. So they say, well,
Hmm.
yeah, I kind of agree. I had to do this because of the law of land, and I didn't like this law of the land, and I had to work around that. And a lot of
Hmm.
intelligence is just emphasis or focus, and I'm giving a
Hmm.
different focus that you're not going to get on the mainstream media, which
Yes.
is people
Because
have to have something
because.
in common. And now that people are in more conflict, particularly over
Hmm.
corporations and their medicine that they're trying to impose, this is more an issue in Australia and more an issue in the United States. We're supposed to wear masks over our face when we go
Hmm.
to a store or go to work. And this is a burden. It's
Hmm.
a serious burden that many think is doing more harm than good. And then we have the deeper questions religion raises. It looks like, and I'll say it sounds silly because we've been very practical.
Hmm.
So, what
Hmm.
I have to say, it looks like something evil is in control of the world.
I think okay, you have mentioned wearing mask, and I think it's worse in Australia, and also it is even very difficult for some people to wear mask in the US because many people don't believe the whole coronavirus thing, pandemic thing. So you don't have to believe in it. You don't have to agree with it. If the law of the land says that you have to follow it, then I think there's nothing wrong wearing it. Just put it on, shop something, do some shopping in the supermarket, then get out and remove it. It's not
Well,
a big
I
deal.
agree with that. And I usually keep the mask like this below my nose, and no one says anything.
Mm-hmm.
But if I go
Uh-huh.
close to people out of respect for them, I pull
Mm-hmm.
my mask over my nose. But I'm more concerned for the
Mm-hmm.
workers because for people to wear it all day long is going to damage them.
Mm-hmm.
So it is an issue.
Yes. Yes.
It's it's
Mm-hmm.
it's uh,
It in.
uh
Mm-hmm.
it's an issue. It's like a form of pollution. It's a burden on people, and people are
mhm,
barely surviving, which is they're barely affording their food and their rent, that it's an added
mhm,
burden that can damage people. There's an expression,
mhm,
the straw that broke the camel's back, which is you load up a camel and then the camel's fine, and then finally you put one thing on it, you know, could be just be one screwdriver or something, and the camel says that's too much and throws it all off of its back. So
mhm,
what's going on today, what I do think is in power at the very top, above the leaders, is evil.
mhm,
And it is
mhm,
destroying people. And we are all in a spiritual battle. And we have to
mhm,
choose and how we do our spiritual battle. So I agree with you. If you're going to wear the mask for 5 or 10 minutes, it's not a problem. But it is an issue for people who
mhm.
work. It is an issue for children going to school. We are in a spiritual battle.
Yes.
And I don't think the
Mhm,
scientific evidence shows, and you can read it on the, the box you get a mask from, the mask is not going to stop viruses. It's it's a it's
mhm.
more of a show than a protection. It's more about complying
Yes.
to authority. But we could debate for
Mhm,
2 or 3 hours. I have one
mhm,
Facebook friend that is very
mhm.
upset that I will not promote the masks. But I've read the
I,
different
I,
experts.
I think you should. I think you shared a video of her, and she was very upset and she was very angry about the mask thing when she visited the store, and the management asked her to put on the mask, and she refused. And she made the whole video. I watched it, and I think I agree to some extent. I agree with this point that uh, if you have to wear it for 10 or 15 minutes, then okay, no problem. But when you have to wear it for the whole day, then it's not good for your lungs.
Yeah, I think so. But we've always been in a
Mm-hmm,
spiritual battle, and I think the religions say that. I think
mm-hmm,
all the religions, we've always been
mm-hmm,
in a spiritual battle with the evil at the top, and we have to
mm-hmm.
choose our battles wisely. We have to we have to first of
Yes.
all battle it with our mind. The
Mm-hmm,
meditation and the speaking are very important, and we
mm-hmm.
have to do it in such a way we don't lose a battle. We don't want to go to
Yes.
jail or be killed, um, or be fined, but we
Mm-hmm.
do have to offer reasonable resistance to what is wrong. We have an obligation
Yes.
to resist what is wrong, and we're going to take a
Yes.
certain amount of pain and loss for our moral
Mm-hmm.
obligation to resist what is wrong. And the question is,
Yes.
each person, I think, and this is my religious view, has to go by their inner light. I think each of us has a relationship to what is divine, and we have to divine also as a verb what is right and wrong, and we have an obligation to defend what is right and to resist what is wrong. But we
Yes.
should do that with
And
wisdom.
that's how, yes. I think it's around about an hour, and we have almost discussed, we have covered many things in laws of the land, and started uh, we have ended our discussion on the coronavirus and laws of the land, then conflicts, corporations, and the culture, tradition, and how all of these things are related with each other. I think we have covered enough.
Yeah, I think so. I think we did an okay job. I'm happy with it.
Yeah. Okay. And okay.
Okay, I'll share it to my site. It will.
Okay.
I'll see you maybe next week on this. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, that was Edward, and we were having a wonderful discussion with him, and we have discussed many things in law of the land, and it was very interesting topic. And I was unsure in the beginning that uh, how many things we are going to include in our topic in the for discussion, but Ed has included enough material in the discussion, and I'm thankful to him. Uh, and I think if you have any questions, leave it in the comment box below. I'll get back to you as soon as possible, or Edward, I'll tag him, he'll answer it to you. Thanks, and good day or good night. Blessed.